Welcome to the hallway here. I love this little wall right here with pictures of my family. It's really wonderful. There's this cool little arrow I made out of a pallet. Looks like it's pointing to something. Yep, the basement. All right, let's get going. Now, we've made a lot of progress since the last video. We were showing some of the framing and some of the dividing of the rooms, talking a little bit about the electrical and boxing in ductwork. So let's start with that. Now it's a little bit dark down here because I have disconnected some of the lights and I'm beginning in my mind to plan how I'm going to run the circuits to divide the lighting into their rooms now, like the TV room, the hallway, storage room, and the bathroom. And some of the circuits are existing that I'm going to basically transfer to their dedicated location, and some of the circuits are going to be brand new circuits pulled from the panel board. So I have to figure that out, and I haven't figured it out yet. But if you do something like I'm doing, you're going to have to figure that out too, or get an electrician to help you figure it out. That would be a good thing to do. Let's talk about the ceiling here a little bit. You can see I've got this drop ceiling, and I could actually touch it. That's borderline low. I really don't like it that low, but that is as high as I could make it while still having drywall nailers below the ductwork. And I really needed to in this hallway because it's 4 feet wide. A piece of drywall will not span 4 feet. Let's look back here in the bathroom just for reference though real quick. You can see that on this little box in, the ductwork is actually flush with the bottom of the wood and there's no framing running across it. So I was able to make this one higher because it is narrow enough that a piece of drywall can span it without any intermediate support. So that was one difference from in there to in here. And I also needed room to go ahead and put wiring and other things in here that I'm going to be doing and lights. I actually thought about just screwing some plywood up here because you could get a 3/4 piece of plywood that would span across this. And that would save you 3/4 inch of height compared to a 2x4. And you could screw drywall to that 3/4 plywood. But I decided not to do that because then it would make this whole area inaccessible, again, for the utility purposes of wiring and even some internet wiring and things like that. So I like that it's open right now and accessible for me and some other folks to work. I'm going to put can lights in this ceiling, and I am very limited because of the ductwork where I can put a can light. You can see if I wanted a light right here, it's kind of a no-go, but I don't want any lighting that is going to be surface mounted because it's already low. I don't want another thing down below the ceiling. They do make can lights though that are really thin, like I don't know what they're called, but there's really thin ones. I'm using the big metal ones basically. I've got some right here. Hey, look at this. All right, here's the can lights that I'm using. These are made by Halo, and this is like a traditional rough-in can light. This is a 6-inch can, and this is primarily what I'm going to use. But in a small space like this, I'll probably use 4-inch because they don't need to be so bright because they're so low. All right, so I will just have to find places that I can put them where I have space in between the joist and there's not a big old piece of ductwork. And it actually will work out okay. But if I needed to put one where it wouldn't fit because of the ductwork, say right here, I might really like a light right here because I have a closet right here and I might not put a light in the closet, and I would love for light to shine in this closet. So I might need to use one of those thin, I think they're called hockey puck cans or something like that. I don't know what we call them. All right, let's move on down to the bigger room, which is going to be a TV room for me and my family. And there's a lot going on in here that I've been thinking about, and some stuff I still haven't figured out. But I'm going to give you the basics of it. All right, above me here in the upstairs is my foyer. So when you walk in the front door, it's a nice spacious area. The floor, however, was a little bit bouncy. And while this met code during the time that I built it, the framing did, and it still meets code today, the floor is just a little bouncier than I like. And let this be a reminder that the code is a minimum standard. It will pass code, it will not fall down, but I would have done something stronger in this floor where I have a high traffic area. A lot of people, people come and go. You're going to have 3 or 4 or 5 people, interacting. That's a pretty significant live load. Furniture and things, we consider those to be dead loads, which we'll talk about that on the other half when we get to the kitchen area. So in order to make my floor stronger, I installed an LVL beam that is no longer here. You can see the hanger actually, come check this out. So I just bolted a hanger to the block wall right there and installed this LVL, and it cut the span in half. And that really is the strongest, I don't know if it's the easiest, but it's definitely the strongest way to make a floor stiffer, is to put a beam right in the center of the span. So a lot of times in a basement, you might have an opportunity to do that before you finish your space and improve the spaces above. So my goal though was to make this as strong without the LVL. So what can I do? There's a couple of options. One is to double the joists, or we call that sistering the joists. But down here, it wasn't an option really at all because of all my ductwork in the way. Tons of wiring and mechanical things. I've got my gas line running through there, and it was just too big of a mess. On this side, you can see I've got water lines running basically continuously through the whole end. There's no way I can get a joist to go back up in there. So I decided to lay these strips of 2x4s flat on the ceiling, screwing them in. And basically what that does is sort of like bridging. So any individual joist that you step on is now connected underneath with a support to the next joist on both sides, so that they have to bear the weight together. Now, I go around jumping in my house to test this out, okay? I don't have an official way to do it other than I do this right here, okay? I just bounce up and down, and I think, does that wiggle too much? Or does it feel really sturdy? And right now, it's still wiggling just a little too much. And so what I think I'm gonna do is add what we call bridging, which is just solid blocks of wood in between the joists. So if these are the joists right above me, I'm gonna add a block of wood that's only 14.5 inches long that will actually connect in between the joists and connect each one to the one beside it. And you've seen us do this on Builder Brothers channel. We do it on decking a lot when we have 2x10s or 2x12s for deck joists. And that helps the deck to be more rigid and unified, to have all the joists connected to all the other joists. We typically don't do it on spans less than 10 feet, but this span is over 10 feet, and I think it'll benefit from some bridging. And that'll be my last ditch effort in this area to make a strength improvement on the floor above. I really don't have any other tricks up my sleeve, so I'm thinking that's gonna be all I can do. But I am gonna do all that I can do now, because once I cover this all with drywall, of course, then I don't have any more chances to make it stronger. That's enough talk about the ceiling, although I could go on because there's just so much to say. And really, this video series is almost impossible to include all the things to consider when you're finishing a space like this, because there really are that many things to consider. All right, but we're gonna try to hit as many as we can. So I've got some wall framing here. I've added a wall. Now the purpose of adding a framed wall in a basement instead of just using the block wall, there's many reasons. I'll go ahead and say as many as I can think of. One is that I'm going to insulate this wall. So this block wall is underground completely. My garage slab is at the top of this wall. And so this doesn't really go outside, but the ground temperature is probably 50 to 60 degrees below ground. And that's a little bit cool. So we're going to insulate right here. Another thing is that I'm going to run some wiring. I need a really good place to mount my outlets and light switches. And also I need to attach drywall. And I really don't think it's a great idea to attach drywall directly to block, although I'm going to do it somewhere else in this project. We'll talk about that later. But so this was kind of an easy thing to do. Doing this type of a traditional frame is screwing down a bottom plate of pressure treated wood with Tapcon screws. I'm going to show you one right here. Just happens to be one laying on the ground. This is like a 2 3/4 inch long screw. It's a 1/4 inch diameter screw, they call it, and you pre-drill with a 3/16 masonry bit, okay? So these screw in super easy. It just makes really fast work of installing the bottom plate. Then I take a long level and I draw a vertical line up to where the top plate should go, and then I've installed my top plate, and then I literally just measure each stud and cut it to length and screw them in one at a time. And I actually even just use the level on the side of the stud to plumb it. So while I do layout on the bottom plate with my tape measure on 16-inch centers, I actually don't have layout on the top plate, and I just plumb it up with the level. It seems to work just fine. All right, now this other wall, you can see, looks quite a bit different. This wall, I've just installed some rigid foam board with some caulk behind it just to stick it to the wall, really just for convenience. And then I have screwed on some studs flat. Now, why would you do that versus just building a standard wall? Well, I have a really good reason, and it's right over here. My staircase. All right, now I don't have a tape measure on me, but I can tell you that from the block wall to the inside of this little railing is 36 inches. That's kind of the minimum for a standard staircase. And guess what? I need to be able to insulate and frame this wall for finishing it. So this was basically the thinnest wall design that I could come up with that would still give me insulation and a place to run some wires. A little bit more difficult, but I'm gonna have a minimum of like one outlet on this wall, and that's about it. There's no other light switches or extra wiring. So again, I was going for minimum thickness, I guess, minimum thickness, that's what it is. And so this is gonna stack out with the drywall to be about 3 inches thick. And so then my 36 is now 33. Uh-oh. Plus I have to finish this side of the wall and put drywall in it and a handrail. This space, while it was inspected, was considered unfinished, okay, in the original build of the house. And so some things just aren't exactly required to be the same as finished space. But now it will be, because I've pulled a permit for this job, of course, and it will be inspected. Actually, after the video today, my inspector is going to be here to look at my framing. So I hope I did an okay job. And if I didn't, I'm sure they'll be glad to tell me what I missed. I have a suspicion. Do you want to know what it is? I'll tell you. All right, let's have a look up here at this wall. You can see that my studs, there's no top plate to this wall. And the reason is I don't need a top plate for this wall. The drywall can go in the ceiling, and then the drywall can go on the wall and slide right up tight to it. But what may be concerning to an inspector is the air gap space in between these studs that allows an air flow up into the floor system. This may be a fire code violation, all right? Now, it's not so that fire can't travel as much as it is airflow, which definitely accelerates the travel of fire, okay? So when I put something in there, if I do, it's gonna be made of wood. It's not fireproof, but it's more like a draft stop, if you will. Fire blocking, draft stopping, they kind of intermingle in such a way that I don't know which one is which sometimes. At any rate, that is mostly not okay. This stud wall over here, though, however, does have a top plate, but I have space behind it. Am I going to have to fire block that? I don't know. I really don't know. And let's go back to the hallway just for a second. Right here is another good example of something that is borderline, well, maybe a code violation. See this cavity right here that goes on up behind the ceiling gives this airspace access to the duct channel above me and to the floor system. I'll just say it is best practice that any stud bay has a fire blocked, at least a 2x4 thickness material that totally separates this airspace from whatever is above it. That's kind of the norm, okay? So I am not going to have that in place when I get my inspection, and I'm going to see what they say about it. I'm going to actually ask myself. I'm not going to see if they catch it or anything like that, because I am 90% sure it will be required, and I will just end up doing it. All right, back to the staircase. Look, there's so many things that are funny about this when I'm looking at redoing this, because I built this house, what was it, 2007? I think I was 22 or 23 years old. And so I did some goofy stuff. I mean, seriously, it's working out great though. Like this 4x4, this is not pressure treated at all. It's touching the concrete. You know, that's not great. It is pretty strong. I'm actually pretty proud of it. Kind of hate to tear that down, but I am going to rebuild this little section. And then look at this, boom, handicap shower bar. That's pretty nice, or toilet bar. That's a really good grab handle actually. And the reason I did that, my dad has some of these in his house. He has a sort of a spiral staircase like this, and these actually do make a very easy to install, convenient grab bar for stairs, although it is not passing code. because a handrail is supposed to be continuous where you never let go, okay? So this, you have to hold it and then hold this separately. And then, hey, as if it can't get any more wacky, I've got another great non-code passing handrail right here. Look at this. This is the staircase of many types of handrail. Now, while you can sort of grab onto this and help yourself up or down the steps, it doesn't pass because the grip shape, okay? It is actually, I'm going to draw on here a little bit. You could actually make a handrail that is like this if you were willing to take a router and actually take out some material, okay? Let's just say you took all that out, and then let's just say you did sort of a mirror image of it right here. And, you know, that'd be a little bit of a woodworking project. My pen is not doing great there, but all right, let's just say you took out that on both sides. Then you would have a pretty nice to grab and grip shape right there. Now, the shape is actually described in the code book in many different ways. Some of it is kind of technical sounding and hard to understand though. But there is an allowance for a shape that is like this that would give you a much better grip. So I'm actually excited to take this down and this and that and rebuild it all in such a way that not only is code passing, but really nice. And what I think I'm gonna do is a metal handrail. Like this is a tubular round steel. This is stainless, of course, but I'm gonna use regular like mild steel because I can weld it and shape it and things like that. So I'll have a handrail that probably comes down here and actually makes probably a goofy looking curve coming around here. And it's gonna be curved. Like it's gonna be hard to make actually. And, but I'm looking forward to figuring it out. Okay, now we're not done here in the stairs yet because there's way more. I know what you're thinking. You gotta be done soon, right? But all right, so this width of the staircase, let's get back to that. 36 is the minimum for a staircase width. It's the minimum for a required exit. Okay, let's just say that there were no doors down here in the basement. It didn't go outside. Let's say this basement had no daylight walls at all, and it was just to an underground cellar kind of basement. Well, that would mean that this staircase is the only way to get down and back up, making it a required egress exit. It cannot be less than 36 inches. But I have daylight doors down there. I can go out a different way. This is not a required staircase. As a matter of fact, I could close this off completely and nobody would even care because I can go outside. All right, so there is an allowance for a staircase that is not required, that it can be down to 27 inches wide. Okay, so you don't want to go less than that, obviously. So anyway, I am going to be covered under the code to have 33, maybe 32 inches. It's just, it's going to be more narrow than I want, but I don't have a lot of other options. So that's what I'm going to go with. Now, look above me. It seems like everywhere you turn, there's something, you know? There really is. Right above me here, you can see that if I get up on this next step and I kind of get, you know, I'm not going to actually walk down the stairs right here, but you see the distance above my head is not much. The minimum height from a stair nosing to any part of a ceiling is 80 inches. Now, if 80 inches doesn't ring a bell to you, 80 inches is the height of a standard door. And that makes it the absolute minimum height for any ceiling, I think pretty much anywhere in your house, but definitely coming down a staircase and crossing a floor system like this. Now, again, this passed code back when I built my house, 15, 18 years ago, whatever. Will I be held to that standard now? I don't know. But believe me, my mind is spinning already thinking of the solutions to solve this problem. If the inspector says, this is not okay. Now, will they say it's not okay? I don't know. I'll find out today. But let me tell you the two solutions that I have in mind. One is that this first joist right here is really not supporting anything above. And I do know that because I know the way that I framed the floor system above and the staircase that is above me. So I could literally cut this one out, making this next one over become the lowest point. And I can't stand on this step and be below this joist now. So, okay, basically that moves me down to this step is the height measuring position. And I lost, what is that, about almost 8 inches. So I know that this is about 74. And so plus 8, that gives me above 80. That's one option. I like that. Now, nobody wants to come down here and smack your face on a floor joist. And I'll tell you a really short story. When I first built these stairs, when I built the house, I was so proud of myself. You know, I was young and building houses and, you know, building my own house. I had that real sense of pride. I had built the stairs down here, and then I came walking down and that floor joist was right here. It was like right in my face. And I was like, what? I totally built it wrong. I did not plan it out correctly. And so I had to tear the stairs out and start from scratch. And I had to basically subtract a step. I had to lose a step in order to make each step taller so that I came down steeper so that by the time I got here, I would be lower. I hope all that made sense. All right. If the header height idea turns to be a bad idea, to cut that out and to move it back. My other alternative is to tear out about these bottom 6 steps and reshape them so that I add and condense one more step into this pie-shaped area here. I have 3 steps that make up this 90-degree corner. We call these winders or pie-shaped steps. So 1, 2, 3. Now, there is a minimum of requirement for this pointed part of the triangle, and it's just 4 inches. So you're not allowed to have less than 4 inches at the most minimum point. But I think that I could actually reshape these and add 1 step here so that my last step would actually be right here, but I would be stepping down to the concrete. So that's another option. I don't know if I'm going to do that. That is obviously way more work to tear these stairs out and rebuild them for a 3rd time. But I would do it. I mean, I don't really care, of course. So those are some things to consider. If you're doing your own, I know this is kind of a lot. It's even a lot for me, believe it or not, to think of all the things kind of at the same time because I have this whole place torn apart. Believe me, if you haven't done this before, it will be overwhelming. All right? But don't let it get to you. Just try to think about each thing and what is the most important thing about each thing. And anyway, that's why we're making videos like this, so that we can share some insight about the process. And what would be really great actually is to plan ahead before you tear something apart like I've done and now be stuck in a situation where you have to figure it out and the pressure's on. But that's just kind of my style, I guess. I kind of like it. Now this room that we've been in here for a while is only 14 feet by 14 feet. And there are so many things to consider just in this small space, but that's just the reality of it. I want to point out that I have a couple can lights already installed here. Those are called the rough end boxes. They're not even connected to the electrical yet, but I have my placement figured out and I think that's going to work just fine for this room. I might do 1 or 2 wall lights in this room to add another layer of lighting. I really like layers of lighting so that you can have a bright lighting if you're gonna, I don't know, be cleaning or you're just hanging out. But if you want to dim the lights a little bit, I don't really have a lot of dimmers in my house. I don't think I have any dimmers in my house. Anyway, dimmers are great and all that, but I don't have any. But layers of lighting so that you could have a dim light and a bright light. Okay, I think I wore that one out. Okay, let's just flip around right here. Woo! Didn't see that coming, did you? That's the first time I've done that. I didn't even try that before. That's my daughter's. She'll be she'll be proud of me. Anyway, look, we also did this boxing here that I just want to point out, this ladder style that we call this type of framing, where we build a little short wall on the floor because it's really easy to build on the floor. It's really lightweight, and then we just lift it up and screw it into the blocking in the ceiling. So that right there is as high as I could get it, again, being my primary goal with all of the boxing in. And I did have a bunch of wires in the way, I will say. I want to keep it as tight to the ductwork also as possible to make the tall part of the ceiling feel as large as possible. And so I actually had to pull a bunch of wire staples and slide that wiring tighter to the ductwork because I didn't want to forfeit that extra, even just 2 or 3 inches that I could gain by moving it back. And so I did move it back. I have a part here that I still need to box in, and I've been waiting to do this because I was on the fence about how I wanted to do it. It's a little lower than I want. Obviously, this is like super low. So I thought about just framing a wall straight down so that you couldn't even walk under it. Now, I'm not going to hit my head on it or anything like that. But if I could incorporate some shelves into it or something that would make it look less, I don't know, like it does, then that's what I would like. So that's yet to be seen. Another thing is that, hey, I have internet upstairs. I know that I have a wire running from the satellite outside. It goes into my little mudroom, and I have a wireless router. Okay, that's the total sum of my internet stuff here. And I've consulted with a buddy of mine that does internet because I want to be sure that I don't cover up stuff that I need to get to later. So he's gonna go ahead and pull a new line, like a spare internet line, run it to my mechanical room where he's gonna install a mesh system, which I don't even know what that is, but apparently it's a good way to get internet distributed through my whole house, and I'm gonna have that put in before I close everything up. Also, some other circuits I might wanna run to my garage, which, as I said, is right behind this block wall right here. I have already added multiple circuits over the years. I added a refrigerator in my garage, right? Because I've got kids and we've got drinks and all kinds of extra like milk and eggs and stuff out there that doesn't fit in my regular refrigerator. And I'm thinking about the future. What else may I want to add out there? I can't really think of anything right now, but I still think I might run a dedicated circuit to a box and just cap it off so that I know I have at least one more add-on that I could do without tearing the ceiling apart. Because I hope when I put this up that I never have to tear it down. One good option though that I haven't really talked about at all that I'm probably not gonna do is installing a tile ceiling, like track and tiles. I think they just call that a drop ceiling. But that is a good way to do a basement ceiling, I will admit. My brother's got that in his house, and he's got access to basically everything that you see up here, all the wiring and plumbing and things like that. And it has come in handy for him because he's been dealing with some leaks and things like that. I kind of feel like that is a good idea, but I don't like the look of it as much. And so I am going into this knowing that if I have a major problem and I have to tear it out, then that's the worst it can get, is that I need to tear drywall down, fix a problem, and then repair the drywall. And I guess I'm just crazy enough to know that that's okay. If that happens, right? So, all right, well, that's about it for this side of the house. There's a lot going on the other side, behind the wall behind me, but we're gonna save that for the next video because there's so much to talk about. So thanks for staying tuned. I hope this helps you. If there are some things that you're wondering about related to these basement questions that we're answering here, drop a comment below and we'll try to get an answer to you. See you later.